Very pleased to welcome you to the Pure Edge Start with the Heart series. And the session will be recorded and shared out as well. Very excited to just have these conversations. And I know that there are questions like, why are we having these webinars with various speakers that don't have to do with health and wellness? And to be honest, I think all of our content and the speakers that do come, we're all interconnected, and all of the conversations that we have at Pure Edge on the Start with the Heart webinars and the speaker series, we're all interconnected, and we all have a connection with the groups or the speakers. Pure Edge is a private operating foundation. We've been able to provide health and wellness content and PD throughout nationally and through some other resources through international as well. But the bulk of what we're trying to do is just connect these parts, because taking care of ourselves is one thing, but we also interact with communities. And really this through line for us, especially this year, is just being powered by human connection. So I'm very excited to introduce to you a very dear friend who is trying to do some pretty amazing things and is doing amazing things. But before we get started with our guest speaker, I'd love to just throw up a poll to let us know who's in the audience, and then we'll go from there. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here. I'll just throw up that poll. We'll leave it up for about 30 more seconds. Just let us know who you are. Great. All right. So we've got elementary teachers and secondary teachers in the audience, so that's great. Want to go ahead and Jesse, just let us know. There you go. And as far as we'd like to ask one more question. I know the world feels a little bit hectic these days. I know at least it's spring, depending on where you are in the country, the weather has spring has sprung here in Massachusetts for sure. But we'd love to know how you're feeling today. Sunny, rainy, thundery, cloudy, or rainbowy. So let us know how you're feeling. Just a quick poll, just to get a sense of where you are in this moment. And we just appreciate you joining us. I'll just leave that up for just 10 more seconds. Let us know how you're feeling. All right, so we've got a combination of cloudy and rainbowy. So I think with the climate action and what our topic is today, it's probably pretty appropriate. All right, so we're going to go ahead, and Laura Schifter is joining me. Dr. Laura Schifter is an incredible teacher, mom, advocate, a policy person, and Laura, I'm just so grateful that you're here. I know that you have been working incredibly hard, and I think in the last maybe 5 years, we've been doing some work together, and just really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Let's go ahead and just, if you could, Laura, just start explaining a little bit about your own background. This is Teacher Appreciation Week, so I'd love to start out with you being a teacher. So let's start there, and then we can kind of move on into the conversation.
Yeah, so first, Chi, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be talking with you all, especially during Teacher Appreciation Week. So just to share a little bit about me and my background, I'm actually going to start from before I was a teacher, if that's okay, Chi.
Of course.
When I was 7 years old, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. And one of the things that I realized really early on in my schooling was the powerful impact that teachers had on my own experience. When I had teachers that held me to high expectations and enabled me to have accommodations to succeed in their class, I would do so well in school. And on the reverse, when I had teachers that held me to lower expectations or, put up barriers to me being able to access the content, I really struggled. And actually that impact, I had so many great teachers in my experience, and that impact that they had on my life really motivated me to want to become a teacher, because I knew that you can just have a massive impact on somebody's life when you meet them where they are and provide them the supports and guidance to be successful. And so when I graduated college, I knew teaching was what I wanted to do. I started as a first and second grade teacher, Then I wanted to learn more about how kids learn. I got my master's degree in mind, brain, and education. While I was there, got interested in policy and getting involved in helping more students with disabilities and educators and meeting children with disabilities needs. And I went to DC and worked on Capitol Hill, both in the House and the Senate, and supported policies around increasing opportunities for students with disabilities and really thinking about education systems that can meet the needs of diverse learners. And then I started teaching back at Harvard Graduate School of Education, focused on teaching special education policy courses, as well as federal policy courses more generally. And then my career took a pivot. And I don't know if you want me to stop there or dive into when my career took a pivot, but I'm happy to go either way you want, Chi.
Well, I think one of the things I'm just given your background and all your experience and sort of what led you to this moment and we are going to pitch your book as we are, having this conversation. I know it's in the backdrop for you as well. I would love for you to just share because you've had this wide range of experience. And especially right now with policy, the government, the Department of Ed, I mean, you just name it, and it's just very interesting to kind of think about all the changes that have happened in the last 110 days. So we're gonna put that on the side because I'm gonna cut back to that, but I would love for you to share with us just the pivot and what happened. This is also sort of in alignment with Teacher Appreciation Week and also sort of in alignment with the launch of Mother's Day this weekend as well, right?
Yeah. So, I fundamentally believe that there are days in your life that you have these experiences on these days. You're walking the world as one person, something happens to you on a day, and then the next day you become somebody else. And these are really pivotal days. I'm sure folks that are here, maybe you've experienced them. I've had three in my life. The first one I had was February 28th, 2013, when my eldest daughter, Ellie, was born, and I became forever a different person as a mother. The next day that I had this experience was July 21st, 2013, when we lost my brother-in-law suddenly. And I learned for the first time what it's like to walk this world with immense grief. And then the next day that this happened was several years later. It was October 8th, 2018. And my kids had the day off from school. I was playing with my three kids in the basement, and I got news alert after news alert after news alert that we had a decade left to address climate change to avoid the most devastating impacts. And in that moment, everything I had felt about motherhood and grief met me as I was watching my kids playing in the basement. I realized that I held significant misconceptions about climate change when I saw those news alerts. The day before that, if you had asked me, do you care about climate change? I would have said, yeah, that's an issue, but it's something for those people that are working in the environment to handle, or, it's an issue for my children's 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 children, but not something that's happening here today. And when I got those news alerts and I started looking at this UN report on 1.5 degrees warming, all of a sudden I realized this was not some far off issue. This was an issue that was going to fundamentally shape my children's future and actually impact my children's lives and all children's lives today. And feeling that grief and, feeling all those feelings that you feel as a mom, wanting to have your children be safe, happy, and healthy, I knew I had to do something to work on climate issues. I wandered around helpless for a little while before actually having lunch with my friend Melissa, and I was complaining about everything that was going wrong with the climate, and our world was going to be a disaster, and blah, blah, blah. And my friend Melissa goes, Laura, you've got to just stop complaining and you have to do something. Like, that's the only way to get you to stop complaining is just go do something. I don't want to hear it anymore. Do something. So I, looked to the Environmental Defense Fund. I looked to the Sierra Club. Nothing felt right. And then Jay Inslee was running for president, and he said on day one of his administration, he would ask every department to submit its plan to address climate change. And it was in that moment I realized I didn't have to go work in the environment to work on this issue. I actually could bring my expertise in education policy, leverage all of the people that I worked with in education policy who had not been talking about this intersection. And maybe I could bring folks together and say, what would a plan for the Department of Education entail? I spent the next year talking to anyone and everyone that would talk to me. I would be nervous that there would be no more people to talk to, and then somebody would respond back to an email and I'd talk to them. And I ended up making my way over to the Aspen Institute, where I launched This is Planet Ed, where we work across early childhood, K through 12 education, higher education, and children's media, really focused on what we can do to empower the next generation to succeed in our changing climate.
And that's how you and I met. I think I
Mhm.
was one of those people who answered an email.
Yes, you did. And it was so nice. I think John King connected us actually too, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I think one of the things that I'm excited about is just the natural way that it's embedded into K-12. So I think we'll touch on that. But just your journey in and getting into the Aspen is, I mean, that just takes a lot of effort. I know the hours and hours and hours of time that you've poured into that. And I know that you had launched, let's talk about that piece at the Aspen Institute before we get into this current K-12 piece. You had launched a couple of commissioners. John was one of them, and Governor Whitman. So can you share a little bit about what that was?
Yeah, so we started our work focused on K-12. It was actually interesting. All of this was kind of moving along. I had gotten a meeting scheduled with the former Secretary of Education, John King, and I felt like, oh my gosh, we're finally moving on a path to success. And our meeting was scheduled for the end of March 2020. And then what happens at the beginning of March 2020 was a global pandemic that shut the world down. And it was, in that moment, I was like, oh gosh, the past year plus I've spent building this thing, it's all going to crumble. And our meeting with John switched from being in person to being virtual. But when I started talking to John, what he really talked about too was he was increasingly concerned about climate and realizing the impacts that are happening all around us, seeing it through the lens of his own two daughters, and wanted to have some space to do it too. And so he agreed to co-chair the initiative along with Christy Todd Whitman. We brought on board an additional 20 commissioners with leaders in education from Pedro Martinez, who's currently CEO in Chicago.
I'm going to be the commissioner of Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Yeah, yeah. To Becky Pringle and Randy Weingarten from the teachers unions. So, and to young people themselves, a senior in high school in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So had, 20 leaders in education from across the country. And they went on a listening tour where we focused on different topics over the course of the listening tour. And then after hearing from people, their experiences all across the country and how climate change was impacting them and what the education sector could do, they put together an action plan that really mapped some of the guideposts that our education systems can follow to think about taking action on climate change in terms of reducing their impact on the environment, adapting and building resilience to climate change ahead, of course, doing what education does best and supporting students in developing the understanding, knowledge, and skills they need to succeed, and really thinking about how this is a moment where our society is going to transform. And in this moment of transformation, we have an opportunity to center and advance equity in this work and ensure that all students have the opportunity to benefit from healthy, safe learning environments that can really prepare them for success in the future economy.
It's so interesting because I think the way that you had laid out, there's basically a roadmap that you've laid out with this commission. And similarly, I think it just to back up just for us, for Pure Edge, we've actually funded the National Commission for Social, Emotional, and Academic Development when we were through the Aspen Institute, and we are a partial funder of this commission that you've done for This is Planet Ed. And one of the reasons why we are so connected and committed to doing these things and supporting is because our work is actually impacted by climate change. So as an example, we were asked to help in Puerto Rico after the hurricane. And we ended up going island wide, 15,000 people, getting our resources and really doing the training in person. And when you think about all the different places, we've had fires in California, any place that is impacted in some way, shape, or form by the environment or by climate, it actually impacts schools, it impacts kids, it impacts feelings and all the kinds of learning aspects of it as well. I'm just very grateful that you put this roadmap together. It's a national roadmap. You can see it on This is Planet Ed. Now take us through a little bit. I know that, like why schools, why K-12, right? This is for, companies, it's for CEOs to worry about reducing their carbon footprint, all those things. But why K-12? Why is that such an ideal place and time to start to think about this?
Well, K-12 is really critical to think about taking action on climate change. First of all, there's an urgent window that we all have to act on this issue. Regardless of all that is going on globally, every step forward that we take in doing work on this issue is going to have a tremendous amount of benefits down the road. And so we need to keep that in mind, that the time for us to do this work is right now, to prevent future warming, to help us build more resilient communities, and really provide a safe and sustainable and healthy future for kids. So there's an urgent window for all sectors in society to take action, and that includes education. Another critical reason why education is essential in this work is that education is going to be key to all climate solutions. When working in climate with climate folks, you'll hear people talk about climate solutions, and they'll talk about things like solar panels, and they'll talk about electric vehicles or sustainable agriculture. And sometimes you just want to be like, oh my gosh, do you realize the thing that has to connect all of these solutions is we need people to do it. We need people to create these technologies. We need people to deploy these technologies. We need people to demand them in their homes and use them. And we need people to build better communities together. And education has a responsibility to build the capacity of people to be able to do that. So education is absolutely fundamental to any climate solutions that we're going to take on. There's also a significant amount of benefits to education in doing this work. The benefits to education are the fact that you can reduce your costs. If you transition to renewable energy, you have lower energy bills, and that money can be used for teaching and learning. And then the most important reason why we have to do this is that we owe it to our students. And, we have a responsibility to prepare them for success in their future. That future is being shaped by our changing climate. And so we owe it to them to meet this moment and prepare them for success.
I think about some practical things that you just talked about. So in my time being a superintendent and a school administrator, just looking at getting solar panels and then really offsetting the cost. That's one practical application that administrators can have. There's another one that I think that was a pretty large one that you focused on during the commission work is actually just electric school buses. How many kids take school buses across the country? So that's one mitigating factor. There's another one that it's even just food production and food transportation, right? So all those kinds of things. I would love for you to just we've done this piece, but you had an epiphany even during this process. And you shared about, okay, this is great. We've got policymakers, you've done the K-12 space. I'm just really going through, but you had a different moment, and this is kind of leading us to parents. Can you share a little bit about how you launched the media piece and what the sort of, what led you to launch Planet Media?
Yeah, so one of the things that we came to realize over time is, kids are not only in schools, they spend a lot of time outside of schools too, even though schooling is a critical place to meet students where they are. They're also in museums, they're also in after school programs, and they are spending a lot of time with media. And media can provide a really interesting opportunity to meet children where they are and build climate understanding for both children and their parents to have productive conversations together. Right now, there are not a lot of conversations happening around climate change writ large. If you do care about the issue, you might think that there are, but there's actually been data to show that that's a bias people have. Once you start talking about climate change, you hear more people talking about climate change, but only 1 in 3 people across the country even talk about climate change a little bit, is what we found. So the vast majority of people don't talk about it at all. And yet, kids' lives are being disrupted across the country, whether it's extreme disruptions like the wildfires in LA or the floods in North Carolina, or it's subtle disruptions like sports practice being canceled because of wildfire smoke. Children are not passively experiencing climate change, they're living it. And we need to support parents in having conversations with those kids. And media can be a really powerful tool to do that. So we worked with Catherine Hayhoe, who's the climate scientist at the Nature Conservancy, to distill down 4 essential climate principles that um, all children need to understand. We took what adults need to know about climate change and we kidified those things. And we then said, okay, here are 4 essential climate principles. Media makers, do what you do best. Pitch us your ideas for fun, engaging pieces of content that use these principles to help build understanding. And I know we had the opportunity to partner with you all on doing this call for pitches with content creators. And we got over 250 submissions when we were only open for a month. We invited finalists down to Aspen Ideas Climate in Miami to pitch their ideas before a panel of judges that included our co-chairs, Catherine, Gary Nell, who used to run Sesame Street, NPR, and Nat Geo, Nile Rodgers, who is a famous musician, and Bill Nye, the science guy. So they pitched their ideas before these panel of judges. We selected some awardees, and over the past year, they've been creating their pieces of content, which we finally premiered about a month ago at our Planet Media Summit in LA. And it's been amazing. We worked to create this Earth Day Everyday playlist on YouTube to help put these pieces of content out there. And it's been really great to see how people have responded and see that there are a lot of people using these pieces of content, viewing them, and having good conversations in their homes too.
I think that you've just addressed something that's fundamentally like the argument, right? It's too scary. Don't talk about scary things with little kids. And I think you've actually turned that so that we can have conversations. It's not about scaring people into action. It's actually about what can we do for, prevention. And people in daily lives are impacted, right? If you're living on any of the coasts or if you're living near rivers, if you're living in just extreme weather that's happening right now as well. But I think that it's just very exciting. I'm so excited. It's sort of imagining the YouTube channel sort of taking off. I think tell us I know there's one that's kind of gotten a lot of views. What's the name of it? I can't remember.
Lila goes viral, and Lila goes viral. I think might be especially interesting for this group in particular. So Lila is a teenager who's, trying to be a songwriter, posting videos on YouTube of her songs, and nothing's really taking off. She has, 22 followers, most of whom are her family. Her dad's a scientist, and she would be sort of somebody that would be climate apathetic, would be the way that you would describe Lila. And her dad's a scientist, and he takes her to Australia for something that he's doing for work. And she experiences a climate moment when she sees the Great Barrier Reef and the coral bleaching that's gone on with the Great Barrier Reef. And seeing what it looked like before and seeing what it looks like now really hit her. And she decides to write a song about it and post it to her YouTube channel. And then that song goes viral. And overnight, she gets lifted up as this climate hero. But meanwhile, she's struggling with the fact that she doesn't really know that much about climate change. And she just had this moment and this emotional experience and decided to put it out there. And so then the series is going to grapple with how she's dealing with being a teenager, kind of figuring out how she is in this place as a climate leader and kind of stumbling this fact that she has a lot that she cares about, but is learning about it all along the way too.
You've got that one, that's gone viral, it's part of the name as well, and then you've got other ones that are animated as well, so that's really kid-friendly, super appropriate. They're not very long, so it would be really easy to go on the YouTube channel and really start to, just take a look at those to see if that would be would resonate in classrooms as well.
Yes, absolutely. And, we also put together a little bit of kind of key tips for talking about these videos with children that could help educators in thinking about, how to keep it simple. What are some questions that you could ask after watching this video, either as a parent watching it with your kid or as an educator watching it in your classroom. And I will say, my first grade daughter has been a big advocate of getting their teachers to play it in their own classroom, and they've used them to have conversations as well, which has
Great.
been
Wonderful. So let's get to your book. So this
yeah.
just got published. Very exciting. Thank you. It was fun to, I love getting books in the mail when I order them, or going to the bookstore. But this one in particular is, I think, really accessible. I think that's number one, to really have some practical pieces. But you have a lot of folks who have their climate moments in here as well. A lot of the young people that are that were on the commission. Will you just share just a little bit of the big takeaways of the book? I know we're on time, but if you can just give us just a few of the takeaways of the book, and then for anyone who is here, you are going to get a free copy of Climate Moment, and so we'll send that to you as well. It'll go into an email tomorrow that you get into your inbox. If you just fill that out, we will make sure that you get a copy of the Climate Moment as well. So anyways, Laura, share key takeaways.
Yeah, so the key takeaways that we wanted to highlight with this book, I had my own climate moment coming to this issue. Jonathan, my co-author, also experienced a climate moment, realizing this was going to impact his children. And through our work, we've talked to amazing people all across the country who have been working in education and who have come to this issue themselves. Maybe it's been a one-day thing that's led them to have a climate moment. Maybe it's been a series of things over time, but all of them have realized the urgency of this issue. And what we wanted to do was, in addition to providing really practical advice as to how to do this work in your community, is we wanted to tell the climate moments and experiences of people leading this work. Because, especially too, I think when things at the federal level can feel so overwhelming and so scary, it's easy to feel powerless. And I think what we wanted to do through this book was emphasize the power that individuals can have when they decide to have a conversation with somebody else in their community, be committed to an issue, and just pursue it collaboratively together. And so ultimately, our key messages that we want to get out from this book is the power that individuals can have when they start opening up conversations with other people in their community to get this work done. And that is ultimately our biggest takeaway from this. We've had our climate moments, and now we really think it's time for the education sector to have its climate moment. And so our hope is that this can inspire more people to learn from the stories of the folks that are featured in this book and take action themselves. And gee, one thing I do want to say in particular on, especially knowing this audience too, one of the young people that I worked with, Nana, one of the things that I think is so fascinating about her is she had grandparents on one side of her family who almost lost their home in the Gatlinburg fire in Tennessee, grandparents on the other side of her family who almost lost their home in floods in Bihar, India. And she was growing increasingly concerned about this issue. And then when she would go to school, nobody would talk about it in school. And that made her feel like she was crazy for being so concerned about this issue. And so, I know you mentioned earlier, like people are worried it's too scary to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, as educators, we have two choices. We can help children navigate this world and navigate the scary stuff that might be going on, or we can leave them to navigate it on their own. Another young person, Maya, who we talk about in this book, she said all she wished she adults don't need to have all the answers.
Yeah.
She just wanted them to open up the conversation and say, we don't know all the things we need to do, but we're committed to working on this with you together. And so I think both taking both of those things in mind, I think are pieces that I really hope the folks here will carry with them as well, is that there's an opportunity that we have to help children navigate this issue, that even though it might be scary for us, we have a responsibility and an opportunity to really support young people in navigating this as well. And that might also create the space for you to find comfort and hope in this work too.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I think that, and also a lot of universities are opening up climate centers. So they have a lot of research they're launching and kicking off. So there's lots of opportunities as well to, take something that's currently happening, using the data around us and sort of going in and getting plans of action. I'm just so grateful, Laura. Congratulations on the book and all the heavy lifting to get us to this point. I know that there's a lot of work ahead, especially, trying to just continue moving forward. I think that's all that we can do is continue to move forward and gather folks with a lot of light along the way, so that we are continuing, trying to improve for our kids and for our communities. I just so grateful that you and I are friends, that you are just continuing this work. And we hope that you just keep us posted, and we'll always be a good partner, hopefully, to you, and continuing our work together. So tomorrow, I think it's within 24 hours, an email will get sent out. You'll get links to Laura's work, some QR codes, and also just a little quick survey to fill out. And you can get a free copy of Students, Schools, and Our Climate Moment. Happy Mother's Day to you all. Happy Mother's Day to you, Laura. And thank you so, so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Chi. So grateful for you too.
Bye, everyone.